Hello, how are you, Mario?
Hey, Song, how are you doing? I'm doing fine, thanks.
That's great, thanks.
What's going on? So, where are you right now? I mean,
Uh,
what part of the world?
I'm in New Zealand. Yeah,
Oh, nice.
nine
Early in your
o'clock.
morning.
Yeah, yeah. It's not. It's all right.
Nice.
How about
Cool,
you?
cool. I'm in Ecuador, so almost at the end of the day for me.
Okay.
In your yesterday. Yes.
Yes. Yes. Time zone. Yeah.
Everyone.
Hey guys,
Hello. How's it going?
good. How are you?
Well, thanks. It looks sunny, but it's like 0 degrees out there. So yeah, it's pretty.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. Is the sun warm at least?
I don't know. I haven't gone out yet. I'm relying on it. Yeah.
Hey, so Tong, we have our brand spanking new SRE and core platforms who are roped in to join the call.
Cool.
So
Yeah. I just
maybe
made it yesterday.
Yeah, we had coffee
Oh,
yesterday.
oh,
yeah.
okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Right on.
We kind of, yeah, we used to work together.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Small
New
world,
Zealand
huh?
is very small. Very small.
Mhm.
I'm trying to find the Zoom window. This is somewhere. There it is. Hello, everyone.
It's early.
All right. I think everyone's here. I mean, we can start. So this is the sales office hours. I think we have a topic for the first topic, which is default work items.
Yes. Let's suss it.
You want to kind of give a brief introduction, Mario or Charlie, or yeah.
I can start, and then Mary, if I miss anything out, please please correct me or elaborate further if needed. So, in order for a table, every record must have a sharding key, which is essentially where it will be going, where a route, where a request, what sort of organization it belongs to, and that could be a project group or etc. And the work items table is actually the issues table. And I don't know how, if that's just forever or what, but right now it's just the issues table. And we have every work item has a work item type. And the idea was to have custom work item types. So right now, work items are things like issues, epics, tasks, stuff like that, okay, as objectives, key results. So we have each work item has a type. And for that, for every GitLab instance, they then have this pre-populated series of work item types that every GitLab instance needs to support. Those are called default work item types. So that is epic, issue, task, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's 9 of them. And we have a namespace ID on that table, because the idea being is that in the future, we would have custom work item types. And so different groups would be able to sorry, different groups would be able to define their own work item types in the future. I don't know exactly what that future would look like, but that was the idea. And so now we have this table that's kind of global because it applies to everybody. So we're not quite sure how that will be split in terms of, do we have 2 tables, one with the custom work item types, which are, by the way, there aren't any at all because the feature is not done yet, or I don't think it's even started. I think it's just, we're still porting over the current work item types to those types. So for example, epics are being ported over from their own first class type of type epic to a type of in the database issue, which will be a type of work item with a work item type of epic. So the rub is because work item types do not have a namespace. I mean, they do right now, but it's nil. And the idea is that it's global to everybody. So the two kind of challenges we have is, can we have a table where we have these work item types? Do we just duplicate them, or do we split the table so that we have the default work item types being kind of global, or at least synced across everybody? Every cell would have a work items types table or something. And so we had like 6 or 7 different solutions where, should we do it this way or that way? Should we have one table and then have it duplicated, or should we have 2 tables and one of them is, I don't know, instance level or cell level, and then the other ones are or global? So I think it's quite a tricky problem, because even though custom work item types aren't a thing yet, they will. So we're kind of trying to also anticipate what that architecture would look like, dovetailed with cell architecture. That was a bit word salad, sorry. What do you think, Mario? Is that anything? Did I miss anything out? I probably did.
No, that's pretty much it. I mean, future-wise, that's our plan. And then we have already discussed some of the alternatives in the issue thread. From the future perspective, it would be preferable if we didn't have to use 2 tables, because that would add the complexity a lot. I mean, you either have a foreign key on the default types or on the custom types, right? So right now you only have a single work item type ID foreign key. That's how it works, and it would be great if we could preserve that. So, I mean, the main reason, at least for me, to be here, it's to really understand what are the complexities in cells. And I know we need a sharding key, but not completely sure what can it be. We were thinking about maybe having an organization ID as a sharding key, and maybe allowing namespace ID to be preserved in the tables. I mean, if we replicate them across every cell, right? Something like that. We already have CDER classes that maintain these default types, and also their associations, because there are 3 tables that we would need to maintain, and also have a namespace ID column, which are the hierarchy restrictions and parent link restrictions, I think. But anyway, and widget definitions too. So these tables, we have a file, a CDER file, where we define which widgets are going to be assigned to each work item type, and the types that are default, and they get abserted every time a new instance is created with the seed foo, right? This is a part of the DB setup rake task. So that's how it gets seeded right now. And for changes we do on these tables, we always use migrations, right? So if you're a new instance, you will use the seeds, and that's it. But for example, we add a new work item type, we will write a migration and also update the seed file. This we already do, and we have been doing for a while. That's how we maintain these types. So yeah, I'm not sure if that's enough to understand the problem from the future side. I mean, it would be great if we can understand now what's the requirement, and I mean, so we can propose better solutions probably.
Yes. Okay. So I think the requirements from the sales perspective is that yes, the sharding key needs to be present, and the sharding key is non-nullable. I think it must be non-nullable, really. It would be not ideal from an isolation perspective to have it be nullable, because if the application has any mistakes or anything, then we can't guarantee that the data we can't guarantee that the data, like for this particular row, actually is or is not belongs to the organization. Then it has downstream implications for moving an organization's data to another cell, for example. Then we're sort of stuck, right, on that thing. So we want that guarantee that on a database constraint level, that this row actually belongs to the organization. So that's kind of where that sharding key, that's why we need to have a sharding key. And then the second requirement is that this is related to the moving part, because let's just say we have a default work item ID of 2, for example, and then some other row in some other table refers to that, like in the issues table, we have a foreign key work item ID 2 that refers to that. We need to have that to be the same in all cells somehow, so that when we move the issues rows for that organization to another cell, that foreign key still works, right? For that thing. It should work for custom work item IDs because that doesn't change. As in, it's because it's already sharded to a namespace ID. That's the only row that would only exist for in that cell. It wouldn't exist in other cells. But the default work item ID, it will exist in other cells. And that's what we're discussing here, right? So does that make sense? Sure.
I have a question around moving things. So you're saying that if we're moving from one cell to another, right, which makes sense because you might need to shuffle things around. And because cells is an invisible layer from the user's perspective, they don't know which cell their organization lives in, or nor should they, because it's kind of it's a layer that's not obvious to the user. So if someone moves their cell, or sorry, moves their organization from cell A to cell B, do all of their IDs all get preserved?
Yes.
Okay, so if you have which makes sense to me because you don't want, oh, this was ID 1 and now it's ID 3. What's going on?
Because we have both IDs and APIs, so we can't change.
Right. So if you have so you would presumably only move somebody into a brand new cell, or would you move organizations concurrently, so groups concurrently, so that they preserve all and it's kind of stratified, so there's a whole bunch are missing because they're the IDs that didn't get moved, if that makes sense. So you're kind of extracting some of them over in their rows, so they're identical, but then there are a whole bunch in that new cell of IDs that didn't get moved over, and therefore they're kind of available, they're sort of free. Does that make sense?
No.
No.
IDs are going to be globally unique. So.
Oh, they're globally unique. Okay. So how does this get solved generally then?
There is an effort. There is an effort that the database team and the tenant scale group is doing. Well, we're gonna. I think the basic premise is that when a cell is born or provisioned, we're gonna allocate database sequences, pre-allocate database sequences that are unique for that cell. So like 40 bits. That's probably more than enough. And you can imagine that there's 64 bits. So when cell 2 comes alive, we allocate 40 bits to that thing. And then when cell 3 comes alive, we allocate another 40 bits for every table, for every database sequence. That's how we.
So the question, are you going to kind of like aggregate the ID and the like kind of join the 2 bits together, so you're getting a globally unique ID for that value across one, and then putting it into a new cell that then kind of splits it into 2 parts? I'm trying to visualize how this like.
Can you kind of repeat, expand on what you mean by 2 parts?
So you're saying every cell, every table in every cell will have its own kind of identifier, saying I'm in this cell, I'm part of this cell. And the IDs that we're using now are already globally unique, so you can shuffle them at will.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know whether that's not quite accurate in that the table won't have an identifier or anything like that. It's more that when we like every database table has a primary key, and that primary key in every database table has a sequence that we use to do that. So what we do is that we set the sequence for that thing to say, hey, this sequence is this 40 bits. Yeah. And so there's a min and a max. And then for the same table in another cell is a different sequence. So those 2 sequences don't ever clash, even though they are the same table, but they're in different cells. If you get what I mean.
Okay. and you're using that sequence as the primary key, and the ID is another column separately, because I'm just conflating the two, I think.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. So it's making sense. Thanks.
I wrote some bad notes there. You have to go in and refine. Please go ahead.
So I can link to the issue we are
I have
talking.
I have another question. Or were you reading something you wrote, Charlie?
No, I've just written like IDs will be globally unique, but I was listening rather than writing, and then I realized, oh no, nobody wrote this down. So I've been sort of trying to summarize what you said. But please feel free to please please elaborate on what you said with the 40 bits in the sequence and how those things are related. That's really interesting. I didn't know that. It feels like there's a bit of a moving target, but that's not anybody's fault. It's just because it's a complicated thing. So if we have these 40 bits on each one, and I guess we'd be duplicating data by having these default work item types, but maybe that's okay. Yeah, so I think ensuring that those are identical is probably the challenge at the moment. And Mario, you just fixed that bug with, because I was digging into this with Crass, and we noticed that it had like 6 or 7 figure IDs for like 3 of the work item types, and so it was a sequence that got a bit out of hand. So I guess we'll have to, make them consistent, whatever that is. And yeah, so there's a few solutions that have been kind of floated around. So as you said, making them one table would be the most convenient. So I suggested another solution, which is might not be a good one, is having like a ghost namespace ID. Like we have a ghost user, which is kind of like a null user, but it's like a user that's been deleted or something. If we had like a ghost namespace ID, which is like a globally namespace ID kind of thing, and it's just like ID1 or something, or some value, and it basically could mean this isn't actually a real namespace, but we just needed the database to be happy.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that kind of thing? It's like kind of like the -1 ID that somebody else had also mentioned.
Yes.
Would
Yes.
that be something that would be awful, or something that
That's okay. That's okay. I think that's definitely a solution that we can pursue. We need to check in with Tiger and Manoj, who are leading the sharding keys isolation. But the bigger question is that, well, the other question is that this means that the application is entirely responsible for the IDs being the same, right?
Yes.
So that's one option. The other option is to split the tables into 2, and one cell local and one global, and so that we can use like a higher level replication to make sure that we replicate those 9 rows. That probably feels like the better solution to me architecturally, because we're better guarantees versus like we have to ensure that, let's say we have 100 cells, we have to make sure that all of those cells, there's no bugs, the application works. But not that it's impossible. It's just that if there's bugs in the application layer, that the data corruption doesn't happen, right? For example, like we just have errors. How can we do that? Is the open question. Like,
yeah, so I guess the question is, which is I suppose more effort and more effective? Is it splitting the table and having the application do the work to marry those tables every time they do a query, which might not be performant or whatever? Like Mary, you were saying that it would be a lot more convenient to have one table.
yeah.
So is the cost to the application logic there more than the cost to having one table and having the sync So it's really I can see that that's that balance between the sync cost versus the performance of each query cost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think what Mario is suggesting is that if like we detect that, say, the issues work item ID is not 2, unexpectedly not 2, then we error out. Oh, sorry, I don't know whether it was Mario or Charlie. Sorry. Which is okay, I guess, because it prevents. Does that prevent, say, other values from using that wrong ID?
Can you just say that again? Does that prevent?
So issues has a foreign key work item ID, right? And normally you expect the issues work item ID to be 2, right? But if for some reason the issues work item ID is 4,000 because somehow the seeding process went wrong, can we detect that early enough that we won't have data corruption issues?
What I was thinking is that, I mean, right now we have the seeders that will simply assert the types in the database, right? And they will rely on the sequence to provide the IDs. But we could also provide those IDs in code, right? So we assert them with a given ID. We were even thinking about using negative IDs, right? Negative integers, to signify that they are default types and they have not been created by a user.
Yep.
So yeah, that's the thing I don't like about using 2 tables is that right now the queries for the issues tables are already pretty complex. Even just with the separation of the work item type ID to a separate table, before it was a string column in the issues table, it already made the queries perform worse, of course. And we have sorting and so many filters that, I don't know, doing a union or something like that with the 2 foreign keys for some filters might be really not performant.
I agree with that.
Yeah,
because they're really complicated issues. You have to join heaps of tables depending on what the issue or what the user searches for, and yeah, yeah, I agree with that. That's a real concern.
Okay. It's only 9 rows, so I'm sure we can find a solution. Maybe, I don't know. This is a thought. But if we are confident that the seeding process either works or doesn't work, and it stops the whole application, then that should be okay to stop data corruption. But then what happens then? If the seeding process doesn't work, does it prevent the whole cell from working? Is that the intention?
I think so. And this is something we discussed in that issue you were also involved in. Like we had these cases where people didn't successfully seed the application and they were getting errors like issue type doesn't exist, right, in the database. So now we changed that. So it raises a very explicit error saying that if the type is not here because you have raised this error, it means that you definitely didn't seed the database correctly. So please do. So yeah, that's what we were discussing about. Should we expect the application to work if you don't see the database correctly? And I think there are other records in the database that are also necessary to exist. I mean, we do kind of rely on the seeds. That's what I'm saying. Like, we do rely on them. So we shouldn't expect the application to work if you don't successfully see the database.
I think one of the reasons why we had such an inconsistent work item type ID for the I think it was objectives and key result and then something else. It was so high because we had a sequence that went a bit nuts. So I just put a MR link to Mario's fix for that. So essentially the sequence kind of sort of took over and went a bit haywire as it tried to insert records and stuff like that. So I would say we wouldn't use a sequence at all for, well, actually, no, you would need it for after the first 1,000. Can we, like, I'm sure that in the database we could say something like sequence on ID, but like only after a certain point, because our initial 1,000 or whatever are reserved spaces for default work item types. And then anytime anything is inserted below 1,000, it is by code, seed, migration only. I think that's what the
Yeah,
code is.
yeah. That's the thing, isn't it?
Couldn't we do negative integers instead? I mean, then we know we'll never get a negative integer in the sequence. Then custom work item types could start with 1, and that wouldn't be
Yeah.
a problem,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah. So if we
If we
have,
explicitly have the seeds with negative numbers and we manually assign each type a
mhm.
negative number, we can go,
Yeah.
high as we want. I mean,
Yeah,
as low as we want.
that's a really interesting one. So in terms of, do you get like integer wraparounds or anything if you hit like 32 million records or whatever the, I mean, I think we have big ints, so it will be bigger than that. But let's say it was a regular int and you had 32 million records. Would it wrap around to the negatives at that point because the rows still exist and they have to be in there somewhere? Or is that just,
No, it gets a max error because you have exhausted your sequences. Anyway, so the main thing is that as long as the type is correct, then negative sequences.
okay.
That's fine.
But you probably have to go back. You also have to go back and update your primary key, and also update any foreign keys that uses that, right?
Yeah, I mean, right now I was thinking with what Charlie said before that right now we have like very high IDs in a very small table. We're going to have to fix that, especially given the 40-bit thing that you just mentioned. So it would be, and this is something we can do pre-sales, like we will have to change the seeders to use negatives, do background, duplicate the types right now, right? The ones we have and the negative ID ones, and then run batch background migrations to update every issue record to point to the negative ID ones first. Then I guess we can update the sequence to start with 1 again.
Yes.
And then I guess we fixed that problem.
Yeah.
And every positive integer can belong only to custom work item types.
Mhm. Yeah.
And in this case, could we still have the namespace ID column nullable?
I would have it non-nullable still. But
We still need it to be not nullable.
Let's
Yeah,
just ghost
I was
namespace.
I would use something like -1 for namespace ID
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
difficult to say.
Okay. I was asking. I mean, that's because we need the namespace ID column to be the sharding key. Is that the? And I thought there was the alternative to use organization ID as the sharding key, or that's not ideal.
If we use organization ID, then what's the value for the organization ID for these default items? Is it?
Will custom work items types be at the organization level, or will groups
No.
have them?
No.
That's why I imagine. I suppose you could
Okay.
have a namespace ID, and then so what you could have is a namespace ID which is nullable, and then an organization ID which is not nullable. But I don't know if it really solves the problem of the default work item types not having an organization ID, because then we're duplicating within a single cell all those records. And I think that makes the same problem worse. Am I right on that?
Yeah. Every time you have a new default type, you have to run migration for every organization, isn't it? Yeah, because
I mean, we are still going to run migrations in every cell every time we write a migration, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure that's not what you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm not completely sure I understand this part yet, but I think I'm starting to. I mean, on why, I mean, every record does need to belong to a namespace at least, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing for this. Is that for isolation and for moving?
Yes. Yes.
Mm,
Yeah. Yes. For
okay.
isolation and moving. Yeah.
Okay. Then I guess that still, I mean, we would have to do both things that we discussed, like, I mean, having the ghost namespace or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
just so it can be, or even this. I mean, would it work if we simply use a negative namespace ID in that column? I mean, it's not null, and we just in the application we know what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. I
That
think so.
sounds like
Yeah.
a good idea, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
That
so.
should work. I mean, on the database level, not sure if, yeah, I mean, having -1. I think you were saying that you might have to do some logic in the database level to skip moving the -1 namespace ID, something like that.
No,
Or
no, as long as it's a -1, if it's -1, it doesn't belong to any organization. So how the moving logic work is that we say we want to move organization 5 to another cell. Basically, what the mover does is that it looks for every single row which belongs to organization ID 5 and move it. If the column has organization ID, it's easy match. If the column if the table has namespace ID, then we need to look in the lookup table of namespaces to say, okay, which namespaces belong to organization ID 5 and only move those rows, right? So if the namespace ID is -1, then it doesn't belong to organization ID 5, so it won't get moved. That's the idea.
you don't move it, and then in the target cell, it already exists because it's seeded, right?
Yeah, in the target cell, we'll have another copy of those default items as well. Yeah.
Okay.
On a
I think that
database
makes
level,
sense.
can we reserve records? I mean, -1 is kind of way of saying the only reason why you would make an ID of -1 is if you really meant to, kind of thing. And I guess with sequences, it's not likely to happen. But does, I don't know, what am I saying? It's really like, is it kind of we stop anyone from having a namespace of -1? I suppose that's not really a thing, is it? Because who's going to
There's
do
constraints. Yeah, you can add constraints to say we can either add a constraint on the namespaces table to say -1 is taken.
Mhm.
The ID of -1 is taken for the namespaces thing, so nobody insert that row, please. So we could do that, or we could have the application see the special namespace row in that thing. I'll try and find it, but we are already talking about a similar thing for organizations, and I think we're calling it a shadow organization, which is a similar concept. It will be -1 or some special ID for these kinds of cases. So
Sounds very cloak and dagger, doesn't it? Shadow organization.
someone must have watched too many spy movies. Yeah, I don't know where the name comes from, but now you mention it. Okay, so I think we sort of have a way forward. We should confirm, we should kind of check in with Manoj and Aiga on this. They are the database experts, see what they think. Yeah, but basically it involves the trade-off here is that we're basically saying the application is responsible and not the cluster-wide replication thing, which we don't have yet. So
Right.
the other component would be to reclassify this as GitLab main cell, because I think it's currently GitLab main cluster wide. I don't know. DB docs item pipes. Oh, it's not classified yet. It's still GitLab main. So we have to classify as GitLab main cell. Yeah. I see blank looks from Charlie. Oh, you're muted, Charlie.
I am taking notes and wanting to make sure that I capture the decision here in the notes properly. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah. So this so yeah, you were saying like main cluster wide and main cell and that sort of thing. I still don't have a firm grasp of what those mean. Like I see them in merge requests and I was like is this right? So my understanding is cluster wide is global stuff
Yeah.
throughout the whole thing, and main cell is just for a single cell. That's my understanding, but I don't know.
If something is cluster wide, then the time and scale team is going to come along and review every single one of those tables and figure out a way to replicate them across cells.
Okay. So that would kind of sounds like that would be great for the default work items table if we split it. But since sounds like we're not doing that, yeah, it'll be.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. If we're all good with that, do we have any more to talk about this? Or if not, then maybe there's other topics that Rick and David might want to talk about. No.
The topology service. So that's is that there's many services and cells, and will that be one of the first one that gets attention?
Did you say? Can you repeat that? I missed.
The topology service,
Yes.
is that the first one that will be worked on, and that's the one that has essentially the directory of which orgs belong in which cells at any given point in time.
So the first thing that we're working on is the router service, which we're working on right now. And it's probably not that interesting from the database perspective because it's a dumb router. And then the next thing is the topology service, which knows it knows which cell is what and where it's located. And what organizations are attached to those cells. So yes, that's the next thing.
It'll automatically get updated as like someday orgs will move between cells. Like, will it automatically know at any given point in time, like a real-time map of where stuff is?
Correct. Yeah. I don't know how the org mover will do that on a mass basis, but I presume there's some mechanism that will do that. Like the kind of mechanism on a single basis is that when you create a new organization, the application layer will send out a RPC call to the topology service to make a claim, to claim that, hey, this organization name and path is taken, and this is its ID, and it's coming from cell 2, therefore the topology service will save all that information. So from then on, the topology service knows that, hey, this organization is in cell 2.
And the topology service has history as well. It'll know like
it has
where it's okay. And would it have like entity information? Because the trust and safety team who I've been talking to has asked, like, when there's orgs in different cells, how would they find a particular issue or a particular comment down to the org level? Because it's not just in one database now, it could be in one of 100 or however many cells there are.
I think that data will be stored in topology service. But that's not the primary usage for that kind of information, isn't it? So like you can sort of use it that way, if I'm not wrong. Because when we say create an issue, when we create an issue, do we claim anything about that issue? Maybe not. Yeah, maybe we don't have that information. It depends. Yeah, because
I guess it's a question of grain, like how much detail is in the topology service. Is it just like this org is here, or is it like this org is here and it has all these attributes and all these other like low grain
doesn't have
detail?
that belongs
Okay.
in yeah. The topology service will only know of where this org is here, and also like things that have been claimed, like for example, usernames. Because we want to ensure usernames are unique, for example, like so the topology service will know that, hey, this username has already been claimed, so no other cell can ever reuse that username, for example.
Okay, so the username is completely unique across all the cells.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's why I'm saying like issues might not even be recorded in topology because there's nothing unique to be claimed about an issue.
So if a team needed to find a particular issue and say there's now 100 databases, 100 cells, like how would they know how to find that issue without going to 100 different cells to manually query?
I think they would, if they know of the issue, then they would at least know the project. So they would find it that way. Because once you know the project, you should know where the organization is. And once you know the organization, the topology knows what the cell is on.
Oh,
Chances
kind
of
of
you
back-
knowing just the issue on its own without knowing its project is pretty low, I would say.
so projects would be unique as well across all the cells.
Yeah. Projects is because projects have this path thing, like GitLab org/GitLab.
Oh,
So that project path needs to be unique across all cells, and that needs to be stored into topology service.
okay. That's helpful. Thanks.
Yeah, but I imagine we'll probably have a metadata service as well in the future. But that's more of a sales 1. There's more of a sales 2.0 thing for storing metadata. Yeah.
What do you mean by metadata?
Like things like that the application might need, or that's beyond claiming and beyond ensuring uniqueness or for routing. So like for example, if we want a list of all namespaces, because in the admin view, today in the admin view, we can paginate through all namespaces that we want to. With sales, we can't anymore because we can't. We'll need to, like, the very naive way of doing it will be to go to each cell and scan for all namespaces just for the purposes of displaying a list of namespaces. So that's a very inefficient way of doing it. If we have say a metadata service, for example, we could have each cell report all the things that needs to be aggregated and store that once, cache that once, and have it update on an as needed basis, so that when we go to the admin namespaces page, we can just quickly render all the list of namespaces quickly.
Got it. Okay. Thanks. I understand.
So that'd be useful for like security, just finding out where the namespaces are, right?
Okay.
That
That won't come until 2.0 though, right?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. But you're gonna have paying customers on 1.5.
Yes.
So I wonder what they're gonna do in between then if they have a security incident and they quickly need to identify. I guess there won't be that many cells in 1.5. There won't be like 100, right?
Yeah,
Even
exactly.
if they actually do it.
Yeah, exactly. So like it's a question of how much we can build. Our focus is having a working cell rather than having having it have all features that we currently have. So yeah. The goal of 2.0 is to have all the features that we already had in some form.
You said 2.0 feature parity is with current GitLab.com then?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
But we got to walk before we can fly, so we're focusing on 1.0.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks. I don't have any other questions.
I need to hop off, so I'll go. Thanks so much, Tong, for your discussion. Thanks for coming, Mary. I'm glad we sorted something out.
Oh, thank you.
I only had one more question. Sorry,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt.
Go for it.
I was just going to say, timeline-wise, when would the sales team need this work to be done? I mean, just remove the nulls from the namespace column, I guess, on the work item types ID, because we could start doing what I mentioned, like start migrating to negative IDs,
Mhm.
Do the batch migration, and then probably add a not null constraint on the tables where it's
Yep.
where it's needed. When is this expected to happen? I mean, when is it like it's going to block the sales team? Not in the next couple of months?
No, not in the next couple of months. We
Okay.
definitely do need it for sales 1.0.
Isn't that November?
November?
But I can't remember if it's November or January. Either one of those dates. Those dates are the target dates.
Okay. We can probably do it, definitely do it before that.
Yeah.
We just need a couple of releases for the batch migrations to finish, but
Okay.
it would be doable.
Sounds good. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, there's many other things as well that are much bigger. So
Okay. I'm glad we are not the biggest blocker.
not to worry. We're kind of working towards together. So it's not. Yeah, you're not a blocker.
No, nice. Cool. Then thank you for all the information. I think it's a lot clearer now, at
Cool.
least for me.
Yeah. Let me know, or the tenant scale team know if you have more questions.
Sure. I'll make sure I do.
Cool. See you, Charlie.
Then see you later, everyone.
All right. Bye.